For nearly a decade, the world was obsessed with Game of Thrones. It wasn't just a TV show, it was a global phenomenon that united millions of fans, sparked endless debates, and even inspired themed parties and trivia nights. Whether you watched it religiously or just endured endless Monday morning recaps at work, it was everywhere. The show seeped into pop culture from memes to late-night jokes, and everyone seemed to have an opinion about who deserved the Iron Throne. The show's genius? It took the intrigue of medieval politics and supercharged it with dragons, ice zombies, and a cast of brooding, morally gray characters. Every episode felt like a high-stakes chess match, with magic and monsters lurking just out of sight. Westeros felt both fantastical and disturbingly familiar, a place where honor got you killed, weddings were death traps, and trust was a rare commodity. The world was brutal, unpredictable, and yet somehow it mirrored our own. But here's the twist. Much of its drama wasn't pure fantasy. Beneath the dragons and magic, the show drew from the real gritty history of our world. The betrayals, backstabbing, and shocking deaths. Many were inspired by real history, often even bloodier and more shocking than fiction could ever imagine. The truth behind the fiction is sometimes even darker. George R.R. Martin didn't just copy history, he remixed it, blending the wildest moments of Europe's past into something epic. He took inspiration from infamous betrayals, legendary battles, and the rise and fall of real dynasties. He borrowed real events, real people, and real conflicts, then added dragons and magic to create a world that felt both ancient and alive with possibility. That's why Westeros feels so authentic. It's a warped reflection of our own past, echoing the ambitions, fears, and dreams that have shaped human history for centuries. The lust for power, the tragedy of war, and the folly of leaders are timeless. These themes resonate because they're rooted in the real struggles and triumphs of people who lived long before us. So, let's pull back the curtain and see the messy, very human history behind the Game of Thrones. The stories that inspired the show are just as wild, unpredictable, and fascinating as anything on screen. You might find the truth is even stranger than fiction, and maybe, just maybe, even more thrilling. To understand Game of Thrones, you need to know about the Wars of the Roses, a brutal 30-year civil war in 15th century England. Two royal families, York, White Rose, and Lancaster, Red Rose, fought for the throne. Sound familiar? It's the blueprint for the Stark-Lannister feud. The war began with a weak king, Henry VI, and a power-hungry rival, Richard of York. The result, chaos, shifting alliances, and betrayals, basically medieval corporate restructuring with beheadings. The parallels are uncanny. A fallen dynasty, rival houses, and a country torn apart. The Wars of the Roses had everything. Contested thrones, powerful queens, child kings, and backstabbing bannermen. It was the ultimate Game of Thrones, minus the dragons. In both worlds, trusting the wrong person could be fatal. Let's break down the teams. The Starks of Winterfell, honorable, northern, and doomed, mirror the House of York, led by Richard of York, a just ruler whose sense of duty led to his downfall. His head on a spike? History did it first. The Lannisters, rich and ruthless, are the Lancasters, especially Queen Margaret of Anjou, a real-life Cersei who fought fiercely for her son's claim. Richard of York's sons carried on the fight, just like the scattered Stark children. Edward IV, a victorious son, echoes Robb Stark, if Robb had survived. Richard III, the infamous uncle, may have murdered his nephews for the throne, a move straight from the Lannister playbook. The core dynamic, a northern house of honor destroyed by a southern house of power. In the real Game of Thrones, being the good guy rarely ends well. History, it seems, favors the Lannisters. Game of Thrones didn't just borrow family feuds, it cherry-picked history's wildest moments, blending fact and fiction in ways that make the real world seem almost as dramatic as Westeros. The tangled webs of betrayal, shifting alliances, and epic battles, those are straight out of the annals of history where truth is often stranger than fiction. The Wall, inspired by Hadrian's Wall, built by the Romans to keep out barbarians from Scotland. This ancient barrier stretched across the wild northern frontier, a line between civilization and the unknown. George R.R. Martin once stood on Hadrian's Wall, gazing into the mist, and imagined a frozen frontier where monsters might lurk just out of sight. That sense of isolation and danger became the beating heart of the Wall in his story. The Night's Watch? Think Roman legions, stationed at the edge of the known world, sworn to defend against threats both real and imagined. Their discipline and isolation echo the lonely outposts of ancient Rome. The Dothraki, they're the Mongols, nomadic horse warriors united under a single fearsome leader. Their thunderous charges and fierce independence mirror the real-life conquerors who reshaped continents. The Mongols swept across continents, leaving empires trembling in their wake. The Dothraki threaten Westeros with the same unstoppable energy and legendary reputation. Wildfire at Blackwater, that's Greek fire, a real Byzantine weapon that burned even on water and changed the course of naval warfare forever. Its terrifying power was the stuff of legend. Its recipe was a closely guarded state secret, just like wildfires in the show. Only a handful of trusted alchemists knew the formula, and it was lost to history. Game of Thrones took these historical elements and cranked them up to 11, mixing real events with fantasy to create something both familiar and fantastical. Real history, but with more magic, and a lot more green explosions. The show's spectacle is rooted in the awe and terror of the past, but amplified for modern audiences. The result? A fantasy world that feels eerily plausible, as if it could have existed just beyond the pages of our own history books. Sometimes, the truth just needs a little extra fire, and a touch of imagination, to become legendary. Let's talk about the Red Wedding. The moment Game of Thrones broke the internet. The shocking betrayal at a wedding feast, not pure fiction. It's inspired by two real Scottish horrors, the Black Dinner and the Glencoe Massacre. In 1440, the Black Dinner saw two young nobles invited to feast, only to be executed after a grim mock trial. The Glencoe Massacre of 1692, soldiers accepted MacDonald hospitality for weeks, then murdered their hosts in their sleep. Both events shattered the sacred laws of hospitality. Just like the Red Wedding. George R.R. Martin combined the political trap of the Black Dinner with the personal betrayal of Glencoe. The result? A scene that's unforgettable because it's rooted in real historical terror. The ultimate betrayal happens when you're most vulnerable, surrounded by those you trust. Sometimes history is even crueler than fiction. Westeros is a historical buffet with flavors from all over Europe. The Seven Kingdoms feudal system, straight from medieval Europe, where kings constantly wrangled with powerful lords. Braavos with its canals and mighty bank is Venice during the Renaissance, rich, independent, and influential. The Iron Bank? Think the Medici family, but with even scarier debt collectors. The faith of the Seven mirrors the Catholic Church with its hierarchy and clashes with kings. The faith militant? Like the Knights Templar, sometimes at war with the crown. Aegon's conquest of Westeros, that's William the Conqueror's invasion of England. Foreign ruler, new dynasty, superior technology. The only difference, Aegon had dragons. So why does all this matter? Why should we care about the stories that came before us, or the echoes of the past that ripple through our favorite shows and movies? Because history is the greatest story ever told. It's a sprawling epic, filled with heroes and villains, triumphs and tragedies, and plot twists no writer could ever dream up. Game of Thrones feels real because its core is built on the drama, tragedy, and absurdity of actual human history. The lust for power, the price of honor, the betrayals and alliances, these are the same forces that shaped kingdoms and toppled empires. The cost of war, these aren't fantasy, they're the human experience. Every battle on screen echoes 1,000 real ones, fought for reasons just as complex and heartbreaking. George R.R. Martin didn't invent conflict. He borrowed from the endless catalog of real-life betrayals and ambitions. He sifted through centuries of bloodshed and intrigue to craft a world that feels both fantastical and deeply familiar. That's why the show's politics and heartbreak hit so hard. They echo real events. The emotions we feel watching these stories are the same ones people have felt for generations, whether in the halls of power or on the battlefield. You don't need to know the Wars of the Roses to feel the stark Lannister pain, it just works. The family feuds, the longing for justice, the heartbreak of loss, these are universal. Game of Thrones reminds us that history isn't just old names and dates, it's a treasure trove of epic stories. Every dusty artifact and faded manuscript holds the seeds of a new legend waiting to be retold. The line between history and myth is blurry, and the past is always waiting to inspire the next great fantasy. Legends grow from truth, and truth is often stranger than fiction. The series may be over, but the real Game of Thrones never ends. Power still shifts, alliances still form and break, and new stories are written every day. And if you want spoilers for the next epic, just crack open a history book. The greatest tales are waiting for you, hidden in plain sight, ready to be discovered all over again.